Do 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 do.
The Red Bean Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Toad.
I'm Dr. Frog.
We're talking about a topic that I think is very interesting. I was the one that really brought it up to you because I was just so moved by this case about Matt Araiza. What do you think?
Well, the Matt Araiza case is really interesting. I've seen several dozen cases like this, and so it wasn't as exciting for me. I'd probably say 10, 15 years ago, I would have been excited by the case. But it's another example of very strong evidence that Matt Araiza was not present. However, he does have probably the biggest pocketbooks, even as a backup punter, for someone to go after him. And that's the way the lawyer characterized it after the allegations. He said, look, this is just someone going after the bag. And it reminds me a bit of the Trevor Bauer case, although that one kept Bauer out of the MLB for 2 years, I think. I think he's suing. But Matt Araiza's suing the NFL now for mistreatment. And it's tough because in the entertainment industry, anything that brings bad, there's probably something in the clause of the NFL that says if you bring bad reputation to the NFL or the brand, you're out. As an entertainer, anything that brings any negative public criticism to the company, you're out. Imagine a Disney performer. Do you think they're going to be, treated with due process and wait until they see their day in court? Or are they just going to be let go and fired immediately on any accusation?
They're going to probably be let go, but here's the thing that at least got my gears grinding with this whole case with Matt Araiza is that this lady at this party, this is the story, what happened was he had some type of a house party.
Young lady.
A young lady came, I guess they had relations, and the issue here is that the lady said this was an assault.
Said that they had relations.
She said so. Here's the issue. When they looked at the video evidence of this particular case, it turns out he had left an hour before that happened, before this big assault happened within his room. He was not present. She also was saying, I was underage, and when you watch these videos of her, she was saying that she was 18 years old.
Party the night before.
So this tells me that she's lying about her age. So she is in some of these videos here.
It's tough to prove someone's lying because you have to improve intentionality.
But if you have a video saying, "Hey, I'm 18," when she's not 18, it's really hard to refute that. And one of the things I was happy when I told you about it.
Confused. Evidently, she was 17, not 18, even though she said 18.
She said she was 18 in the videos, but she was really 17.
I was wondering if you could look up the age of consent in New York.
I'm not sure. I know that they...
In most states, it's 16 to 17. But in some, I know it's 18, so...
But what was important... Yeah, but the most important aspect of this is that when the police looked at this, and they said, what is... did an assault happen? And when they looked at the evidence, they could say no, because one, she lied about her age. Two, as far as they were aware of when they watched this video of this particular action being taken, she seemed to enjoy it, or she seemed to not be distressed, according to the police. Additionally, 17. And here's the other thing, is that she lied.
She did lie.
And she lied saying that Araiza was in this room. Turns out he wasn't in there, and the event happened an hour after he had left. So here's my biggest issue, is that Matt Araiza, he got fired from the Bills. He got removed from that position.
Hearsay, yes.
And here's the problem. I believe he should be reinstated, because it just sounds like if your case has been dismissed from a court of law, and the judge says, we're throwing this out, prosecutors and the police say, we don't have a case here according to this evidence, Matt Araiza should probably be restored. What do you think?
Yeah, and I mean, I know in the Trevor Bauer case, he's actually countersuing the lawyer for dragging it on for a year and a half without disclosing the evidence that, any lawyer would have said, "Oh, this we don't have a case here," right? One thing that I think is interesting is that hearsay as a form of evidence used to be the gold standard, and then in the 1970s, Elizabeth Loftus, and I advise you to read her book In the Case, Eyewitness for the Defense.
I thought hearsay was bad, though. Was hearsay bad?
Well, she proved in a lot of psychological literature that eyewitness testimony is very unreliable.
Yeah, no, I've heard that before.
And I know it sounds odd, especially in the case of assault, where it happens to a person and they 100% seem to know. But I thought we did a good job of moving away from hearsay and eyewitness testimony as a gold standard. And it seems that at least in the last 10 to 15 years, that eyewitness testimony has moved back to being the gold standard.
Yeah.
When someone says they saw something, well, that's as good as gold.
Yeah, and my issue is that when you have evidence like video footage...
Hashtag believe her, for example.
Yeah.
And I think it does a disservice to people who are actually assaulted or are actually victims.
Because my concern is that because this lady, we're not going to disclose her name because of privacy reasons. I don't think it is either, but I'm not even going to look for it. But my whole thing is simply is that I think she should be punished for falsely accusing Matt Araiza, and she should be legally culpable or required to pay or something.
Bauer mentioned in his case, he lost millions because of it, and the losses that he endured would outweigh the entire amount that she could earn over her entire lifetime.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the Bauer case?
How do you do this? So in Trevor Bauer's case, he slept with a woman.
Was she over the age of 18?
Yes, yeah, that wasn't in question. And they had rough relations, let's say, that in text she said that she liked. But she was also texting and lots of other evidence saying, hey, he's worth $51 million. I'm going to get some money out of him. And people were saying, ooh, get as much as you can. What are you going to do? And she was taking videos of him sleeping after their relations and saying, smiling and grinning and everything.
Yeah, and there was no bruises on her face or any of those things.
Yeah, there was no sign of any of this on any of the 2 nights that they met.
It sounds to me like self-inflicted.
It's a case that would have been thrown out and not dragged out for a year and a half if it wasn't for her lawyer going on a media tour and everything else, is what I gathered from looking at all the documents. But in that case, similarly, Bauer in a video points out that her earning potential over her lifetime wouldn't come close to even just the losses that he endured in it. So he didn't get any money in the countersuit; he dropped it. But what do you do in those cases where what's the right kind of punishment? I guess it would be something like prison.
Yeah, like maybe 5 years or something, or maybe 5 years of probation or something. Or
it's tough because you also don't want to make it even tougher on actual victims to come forward, even if they lack certain evidence.
See, here's the issue I have with that, and the only issue I have with this is simply that the evidence would have to come out to being like egregious. And this is like really egregious what happened to Matt Araiza, because we have video evidence of her saying, I'm 18 years old. She lied. She said she was assaulted, and clearly, as far as we can tell from the video and her in the parties and stuff, she seemed more than willing to participate in that kind of activity.
It's a different discussion. So the people that she was having intercourse with, it seemed agreeable and encouraging and enthusiastically consenting. But it's tough whenever alcohol is involved.
Sure.
But the fact that Araiza wasn't in the room makes it really easy.
Yeah, and then an hour when this thing happened.
It would have been an interesting case if that were the case.
And my issue ultimately is that there's this idea that for her, I think I even heard a recording saying that she personally wanted to hurt Matt Araiza, getting him off the football field, taking him away from his accolades. So it seems to me like there was a certain level of maliciousness in this
Well,
attack.
I think there's also a psychological state where if someone believes that something happened enough, they can make that false. It's one reason why I haven't said she's lied yet. Because lying is very tough to prove. You have to improve intentionality.
Sure.
If someone is mistaken, you can deal with them differently. So, for example, if you're a counselor and someone tells you I've been assaulted, and there's no evidence of it, right? It might be a psychosomatic symptom or something, right? They feel like they've been assaulted. There should be space within our clinical and legal industries for people who can get the care as if they were assaulted, even if it didn't occur, and to be treated with dignity and respect.
Okay.
There shouldn't be a middle ground where it's, oh, she's obviously a liar.
Oh no, I've never been about denying care.
Molyneux, someone who was just pulling a fast one over people.
Sure.
Without that character judgment, if you remove that character judgment, what's left is, just like that you might meet insane people. There are people who say they're Elvis. What we do with them isn't saying they're lying. We're saying they believe a falsehood.
Yeah, and I think...
But for them, it's real, if they think they're Elvis, so to speak.
Oh, yeah, and I think if someone believes they're Elvis, I mean, we should definitely have some type of health care.
If someone thinks that Matt Araiza, maybe they dreamed that Matt Araiza,
but the problem is...
really the culprit, right? They would have loved it if Matt Araiza...
But there should...
sue them.
But you should be considered innocent until proven guilty.
From Matt Araiza's perspective, yes. And so whenever there's a claim that comes forward, my solution... in terms of, hashtag believe her originally came out of a counseling method, which says when someone comes to you saying a story, what kind of counselor are you if someone says I was assaulted and you say, you're full of it, and you wave your hand at them? No. As a counselor, you're supposed to say, tell me how you feel and what do you think about this and how is this, right? And so it came from a counseling method of accepting the reality of the patient.
But it wasn't a methodology of justice,
but it's
though.
not. It's not a good way to run a court system
or search the truth.
It's not a good way to find the truth. And honestly, what counselors will eventually do, if they're working, let's say, with someone who has delusions, they'll say, okay, I see where you are right now. And then they'll ask questions over a long time of working through that delusion.
To help them recognize the delusions within themselves.
You accept the victim as a victim. And I'm wondering, I think that there could be some research involved here of victims without perpetrators. Perpetratorless victims. Someone who says, if I say...
because this is an imagined thing.
Yes. So if I say Elvis punched me in the face...
Sure.
And I really believe that, then... I should be still treated with human dignity,
sure, and
respect, and people should believe this. But it doesn't mean that whoever owns the fortunes of Elvis's family needs to be involved in compensating me for my delusion.
I think for me, at least, what I strongly stand by is that I kind of go back to the Constitution. I go by the Bill of Rights.
Yeah,
I have a right to a fair and speedy trial. I have a right to look at my accuser. I have a right to have my day in court.
Yes.
And I feel like in many ways, the way social media has done it, I believe as far as the Constitution says, I have a right to look at my accuser.
She can say, it's too mentally taxing.
I think in any type of criminal trial, you have to have the person there. Yeah, you have to be there. You have the right to look at my accuser. This is rights that are afforded to us as American citizens. And one of the things I would say strongly is that instead of rushing towards this guilty and then you have to prove your innocence, I really think you should stick with
sensationalism in media.
Yeah,
it catches fire in the zeitgeist of everyone who listens. And I think what happens also is we have a lot of murder mysteries that play on TV 24/7. So I think a lot of people watch that for entertainment, and they desperately want there to be chaos going on. They're like, they look outside and the normal traffic's going on, the birds are tweeting, and they say, I don't like this. This is too boring. Life is too boring. Let's think of something really exciting. Maybe a murder mystery, maybe something exciting. And then the national news is going to say, well, please let there be some frat party and San Diego that gets out of control.
And you see, that's the issue. I think we have this idea of like having our own idea of how to solve the crime or something. This actually brings me back. This is years ago. I was talking to this lady who knew another lady who was a medical examiner, and the story went like this.
Wow.
This lady was driving. Basically, what happened was, unfortunately, we found this woman's body in the woods. She had no clothes on. She was laying in the woods, covered up, dead.
Wow.
And yeah, they just found her body. And so for a while, someone said, "Oh, we think she was murdered. We think she may have been assaulted." All these other things. But as the medical examiner was analyzing her body and they did an autopsy, this is what they found out. They found out that because this lady lived in the woods,
Sure.
she drove around a four-wheeler. She hit something. She fell backwards, hit her head on the ground, died. But she was driving out there naked on a ATV, and so
it sounds like America. If I've ever heard of free before, this goes back to our buns and guns.
Buns and guns, exactly. But here's the thing: if you would have came there saying, "Oh, well, this is a murder, this is a rape," or
no, it's all right. But we've seen enough Columbo episodes to think, how did the murder? It's like a 1-minute mystery.
Yeah, exactly. We're like, oh, we already solved it. And I'm like, wait a second. Can we at least look at the facts? Let's look at the evidence. Let's look at the medical examiner's report. And I think before we jump to conclusions...
of her driving, that four-wheeler. If they found the four-wheeler...
Yeah, it was stranded somewhere. Eventually they found it or something.
There was no evil boogeyman.
There was no evil boogeyman. It was a terrible accident, and this lady may have had poor judgment on driving a vehicle in the...
dark-skinned, 6-foot-tall person with a
exactly. Yeah, it was not. It was.
Boogeyman.
It was not a boogeyman, and this is the thing that I keep going back to. That story is that
I apologize for slipping in the racial profiling nod because
Sure.
was the description of a lot of
Yeah, well, this person. Like, sometimes you see these pictures being like, this is the guy we're looking for. And it's like the most ambiguous drawing of a human face imaginable. I'm like, that kind of looks like everybody.
Well, yeah. They're not working with much. But yeah, honestly, the amount of, profiling that occurs is quite ridiculous.
Yeah, and then a bunch of innocent people get caught up in that stuff. And then
a lot of this, with the strictness, is whether you're concerned with a type 1 or type 2 error. So a type 1 error is... Well, I might be flipping my type 1 and type 2, but one is a false positive and the other is a false negative.
Sure.
So one is if you have 100 people and one of them is innocent, you arrest 100 people, but one of them is innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Would you still do it? Because you're getting 99 bad guys. So wouldn't that outweigh the one innocent person you're arresting, the injustice of that?
I don't know. I kind of go back to what Ben Franklin said. Yeah. He said something on the lines of, he said you can get 100 guilty people and, only one innocent person gets it. Or 100 bad people get away and that one innocent person doesn't get hurt.
Yeah.
He always said that it's always better to let the innocent person go than punish those 100 people.
I agree. So for example, that's the other one, the type 2, the false positive, which is, would you rather let 99 of the 100 arrested? If you let all 100 go, would you rather have the 99 criminals go and the one innocent person not be unjustly treated?
Yeah.
Or would you rather be safer, quote unquote, and allow for a little bit more injustice and arrest all 100 because you're getting 99 bad guys, but one of them is going to be innocent. But I think, I don't want to bring too much of a gendered lens into this.
Sure.
But I think that one reason why people are okay with one compared to the other is that a majority of the arrests are men. And I think that if you're not within that demographic, if let's say you're a woman or non-binary, it might not affect you that much to think. You might prefer the 99 bad guys off the street, even if the one bad man is, or even if the one good man is there. Whereas if you're a man, you might lean towards saying, well, I could be that one guy.
Yeah.
I could be in that lump,
And
just
here,
like anyone else,
and
be
here,
falsely accused.
and here's the biggest issue.
So
Yeah.
then, as a guy,
Yeah.
because we might be more intimately connected to that group, we're saying, well, I don't care if the 99 bad guys go free because I just don't want to
Innocent
be
person.
an innocent person there. But when you're outside that group,
Yeah.
and you're not going to be the one woman falsely accused versus the 99. If we're talking about men who are the majority of these
and I think
of perpetrators being arrested.
And I think the reason why
there might be a lack of empathy.
Yeah.
In psychology today, there's an empathy gap for when there's that kind of suffering.
I also feel that there's like this imprecise form of justice. And the reason why I say it's imprecise or it's not clear to me at least is that from what I understand, prosecutors can withhold evidence during a trial.
Prosecutors, I believe, have to disclose all evidence to the defense.
As far as that case with, Kamala Harris, that was one of the reasons why I'm not going to get into politics,
for sure.
But she withheld evidence as an attorney general during a capital punishment case. And here's the concern I have is that if we're going to be sentencing someone to many years in prison, or we're going to charge somebody, can we at least make sure everyone has as much information as possible so we can make the most sound decision possible? And I feel like we have a system right now that sometimes, I'm not 100% sure on it, but it sounds like sometimes prosecutors can withhold information. And that's the part that makes me a little nervous. When I heard that...
Yeah, I've never heard that. I thought, in the Trevor Bauer case, one of the countersuits is that their prosecuting attorney was withholding evidence.
Yeah. You see, that's my concern of like, when you're withholding information, you're going into a trial in which the odds might be stacked up against you, which brings us back to Benjamin Franklin's whole thing about the 99 people and the one innocent person being unjustly. Yeah. But that's, yeah. There's a lot of problems. But I guess overall, what I would look at is, it sounds to me, at least with this Matt Araiza case, it sounds like people jumped the gun. I feel like people rushed to conclusions. I think people didn't wait for all the evidence to come out. But I do believe that they jumped the gun on this. And I would say in the future, what I would say to men nowadays, especially superstars, it is so scary. The day of going on flings is over.
After you, so there's a subset.
I'm not even encouraging that. But
there's a subset of the population who accumulates wealth through manipulation of others who have resources and means. So if you have resources and means, what I recommend for anyone really, but especially if you're wealthy and you're going to be a target, is do stealth wealth. Don't show it. Don't buy bottles at clubs.
Don't talk about what you do. Don't tell someone that you're playing for the NFL.
Well, they might recognize you if you're that famous. To be in the NFL is extremely rare. The rosters versus number of teams.
Don't mention it though.
Don't mention it, and to be honest, you kind of have to shelter yourself and exclude yourself. You're iffy. Why do you think streamers on YouTube and Twitch? Why do you think they do collaborations with only other big streamers? Well, they know that if they're with a smaller streamer, maybe there's a question about their professionalism. They're more likely to slip up and say something that'll get them in trouble. You can't really trust people outside of that group. So you surround yourself with others in your economic bracket who also have something to lose, and people who don't value you just for your wealth. I heard it's a problem for the wealthy. Is this person really my friend, or are they just friends with me because of my wealth and not who I am?
It's like you want to take more than you're giving, or something like that.
Well, they're looking for, kind people need to watch out for this. This is something I had to really learn to not do, but not be manipulated by others as easily, even if you have kind intentions.
Yeah.
You have to be very, very, your propensity to trust has to be a lot lower
Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah. You know.
And so, for example, if you donate, do it through organizations. Get involved in churches and shelters and things.
Because here, and this is just from my outsider's perspective.
Sure.
I look at the Matt Araiza situation, and I kind of think to myself, and this is obviously I'm not gonna put myself in that woman's situation, but from my outsider's perspective, she could have had she played her cards right, she could have been Matt Araiza's girlfriend, and now
by leaving an hour early, would you say he really punted on the situation? I'm out of here. I really punted the ball.
He really he got that one past the goal line.
Yeah, he said, "I'm out of here. Hand it off. Let's not go for anything."
Yeah, he did not fumble the ball when he got out of that place an hour early before, but. Yeah, that's wow.
Sorry for that. Really punted on that.
You punted on that one pretty good.
So for a third string punter, he's got.
Hey, they call him the punt god. Actually,
hey guys, it's 8:30. I got a dog to take care of. I'll see you.
I need some more training. But yeah, overall, I also was kind of disgusted with ESPN.
Oh, I call them Disney characters now. Since Disney bought out ESPN a couple of years ago, I look at everyone in ESPN as a Disney character.
It's like they were throwing him under the bus immediately. There wasn't even one guy being like, well, maybe it wasn't, or,
They're afraid too. They're afraid too.
They're afraid to lose their job, I guess, yeah.
I'm not sure how long ago this was, but Stephen A., who was on First Take at the time, when he was talking about how horrible Matt Araiza was, he's now running his own show. He's no longer with ESPN, I think.
Wow.
So he's done independent stuff. And I think he has content that, you might like, but he speaks very frankly and directly on topics, probably stuff that he couldn't say.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%.
It's the difference between being an employee versus your own employer.
Your own employee, you're self-employed. Yeah. Because it just seems to me that there was no idea of impartiality. There was not an idea of maybe discernment. Maybe we should wait until the evidence came out.
And it's tough because when you're a defendant, your legal advice is going to be don't comment on anything. And so from the media's perspective, your silence is an admission of guilt. When your silence is literally, I'm preparing for court.
Yeah, this is legal advice. My lawyer told me to stay quiet, and I'm stay quiet.
Yeah.
And me staying quiet hurts me.
Even Trevor Bauer, for the first year and a half, couldn't comment on it until recently. Until a couple days ago, in fact. And, he said, well, I retain the right to speak publicly on this after 2 years. Now I can speak publicly. And in a 3-minute thing, he shared his side.
And he shared his side.
Some of the mountains of evidence. But, it's sad because I've seen this Matt Araiza case happen several dozen times. A lot of people think this doesn't happen often. It does.
The lacrosse team, the Dukes.
Well, there's the Duke team. There's lots. I mean,
and that same situation ended the same way. The lady lied about it, or
there was the University of Cincinnati case.
Okay.
That one was interesting because after the first lawsuit occurred, and someone's friend, was facing jail and expulsion, there's another guy who hooked up with the same person the next weekend, and then he realized it was the same woman who went to the police the last weekend. So he filed first through the same process of going through the school.
Oh my gosh!
And there was a big uproar because the thing was put in place originally to protect women, mainly from this. But now suddenly, when the guy files first.
Oh yeah, then it's not good.
Because then she still could claim like, well, no, it's him, but it's first to file.
Yeah, then she's like, oh no, he got there before I did.
Yeah, he woke up in the morning and said, oh my goodness, it's 8:00. Let's go there.
I need a file before she wakes up.
Oh, and he realized, oh, this is the person that did this to my friend a week ago.
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to file this before I cook the bacon and eggs.
The University of Cincinnati case was very interesting. It was national news. That's why I don't mind bringing it up. But there are other universities I know that have had, dozens and dozens of scenarios.
Well, I'm going to wrap up the story here. I think this is a great topic. It sounds like a topic we're gonna have to probably go over again. And
I'll be a little bit vulnerable and honest, but I was actually assaulted
sure,
in a really violent way like that. I did not go to the police because if it had come down to a he said, she said, at the time especially,
yeah,
it would not have been fair. So I kept quiet about a very one-sided assault.
yeah,
It wasn't a great case.
yeah.
It wasn't a iffy scenario. But I'll say that, as a guy, oftentimes if it is he said, she said,
You're not going to do well unless you really have the evidence and video proof. And
it's a shame because I think it means that a lot of male victims are regularly
harmed, and they don't get listened.
Violently harmed, and they're not going to be listened to. And I recommend that they don't go to police or seek help. So that's something that I've had to deal with.
I kind of wish it was different, and I wish that society was.
I hope that in the future
more considerate,
some semblance of rights. That in some ways, if we've opened the door for lots of people to achieve rights, I hope
they can open that door a little bit more to let men in. And
I hope that after opening the door for so long, we're able to also go through the door as well.
Yeah, that's the key.
Security, etc.
Because it's a shame that we live in a society in which a particular person can say something to another person, and because of that person's biology or demographic or nationality or anything, or identifying, they seem to have a greater power, and we have almost like a second-class citizen type of situation. Because it seems like someone has more rights and then someone else has lesser rights.
Well, and the presumption after decades and decades of media abuse on, if someone's going to look at you and think you're evil right off the bat.
Yeah.
If someone can publicly say, I don't trust, and then they name a race or a gender.
Sure.
And it's perfectly fine in that community. I have a friend in India, and he says that it's similar in India. For example, Hindus can discriminate against religion. So if someone's a Christian, they can say, we're not going to hire you, we don't hire Christians.
Yeah.
Or we're not going to hire you, we don't hire Muslims. Yeah. So in India, there isn't the sort of protections that at least America is working to uphold, or performatively trying to uphold currently. But
because I always consider what Martin Luther King said, and he always said, to judge me by the content of my character, not the color of my skin.
Well, being colorblind or racially blind is seen as a transgression now. So
I know, that sounds crazy. I feel low.
Of course, being anti-racist, so to speak, when we were growing up, was about not taking into account the other person's race when forming a judgment about them. But now there's a sort of push for cultural sensitivity to the point where if you're not taking into account the other person's lived experience and context within them being a part of that race,
then you're the oppressor.
Well, then you're participating in upholding systemically racially biased things in our society.
Yeah.
That we might not recognize if we treated everyone quote unquote neutrally, which is quote unquote the white standard of the society. Is the argument being made, which I'm sensitive to, but can still disagree with it. That the Morgan Freeman approach and Martin Luther King approach of Morgan Freeman said, of course, that we'll end racism when people stop talking about race. Yeah. That's one way of doing it. Another way, someone could easily look at that and say, well, that's a good way of sticking our head in the sand to racism when it occurs. There was an example where I was at a Chipotle and I was getting a fountain drink, and this lady walked up to me, and she had this angry frown on her face, and she looked at me, and she threw her large cup of soda on my face and on my chest, and she pushed me with both hands, and I kind of let myself get pushed to the ground. I kind of backed up and fell, and knocked over a chair, and a table didn't knock over, but I knocked over a chair. And I just kind of let her push me on the ground after throwing this whole soda on me. And like a soccer player, I had my hands out to the side, like, where's the ref, where's the foul? And my first thought was it because of the color of my skin? If I was her skin color, and I'm not going to tell you which one I am, but if I was her skin color, and maybe a young girl of her skin color, she probably wouldn't douse me with a large soda and then push me over with both hands. And I started to think, well, maybe this is racial. Maybe there's some racial component, and she's very angry. And then I paused and I thought, well, maybe she's just off her medication, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, into her motivations.
Your perception. You were looking at her perception, saying maybe she was distressed when she attacked you. It may not even have anything to do with racial or anything.
And I had that thought at first because it would have made perfect sense. If I was a little girl of the same race as her, I wouldn't have been doused with soda and assaulted, right? Or a Coke, I'll call it.
Sure.
I wasn't assaulted. She didn't have a salt shaker on me. She had the soda on me, but or pushed over, right? And then I just realized, the much easier option that has forgiveness in my heart is, maybe there's something mentally wrong going on with her. She stood there for a while and clenched her fists and then stormed out of the building. And the workers came up and said, "Oh, that's kind of odd. Sorry about that. That's weird." And I thought, okay, shrugged my shoulders, went on with my day.
I've always kind of looked at that kind of stuff like hatred. It's like poison.
It really,
and you're not doing anyone. Yeah.
Fight with love.
Yeah, because that's the whole thing. It's like you're not hurting the person you're attacking. Yeah. If you're saying I'm going to attack the oppressor, who you're hurting probably more than anything is yourself. Because that hatred in your heart. And that's one of the things, and I'm not going to get heavily into religion on our podcast.
Well, I already mentioned Christianity.
But I think we really should consider forgiveness. To forgive and to forget. To move on.
It is so...
To let go.
I think it was Bill Maher who... he got fired from MSNBC after 9/11 happened because the next day when people were saying these terrorists are cowards, he said, well, the terrorists that flew buildings into planes... You could say that they're destructive, insane, irrational, but it's probably a pretty brave thing to do to fly a plane into a tower because of your beliefs.
Psychotic, yeah.
You said the truth. You said, well, they're certainly not cowards, right?
Yeah.
They were well trained and all this, right? And of course, he got fired from MSNBC. You just don't say that after tragedy.
Very tragedy, of course.
But
100%.
I think there was also another point that was said where someone said, what would Martin Luther King do in this situation? And the Christian thing that Martin Luther King would probably say is, what would happen after 9/11? Well, turn the other cheek.
Turn the cheek.
Maybe it would be rebuild, but...
I think there'd be some level of retaliation, but there would also have to be some forgiveness there.
But it would probably, if you remember...
A collective...
Bush doctrine back then, the question was, do we wait a couple months for the UN to join us, or do we have to react like next week, send the troops over? And so the question is, we can wait for allies, or we got to go immediately. And Martin Luther King's might have been, take care of, if someone punches you, sure, put ice on it, take care of it, deal with the bully through
the system.
The system.
You call the police, you call the government,
rather
you call
the bullet, rather than grab your own gun and say, I'm going to make this right.
You're going to talk to the authorities and say, I was harmed,
say I was hit,
and I'm putting some ice on my cheek.
You're not just going to punch them back because they punched you. And that's tough. It's tough to do that.
To slow down, and that's one of the things I think with social media is the biggest problem is that there's no waiting. There's just instantaneous.
Judge, jury, and
executioner.
Millions of clicks.
Yep, and just to get the clicks. Well, I think we did pretty good on this topic. I know we kind of...
It's a difficult topic. It's one of our tougher topics. I hope everyone has, maybe we've helped people think a little bit differently. I like to think that I don't come down on either side of anything, but respecting humanity and how we approach some of these difficult things, I think, is important.
And I kind of look at it as always been, what are our rights? And our rights are, the freedom of assembly, the freedom of speech, the possibility of seeing your accuser being innocent until proven guilty. I think these are foundational things that we need to maintain. And what I'm concerned about is the more we deviate from that, we're moving towards some type of totalitarian type of society in which people are going to have less say, and it's going to be more of a mob rule thing. And I really believe that when I bring up this case, I bring it up not just because it's an oddity or it's a rough case and there's injustice, but my concern is just that let's not be rushing to judgment.
Yeah.
And let's wait for all the evidence to come in.
Well, and I'd say I'm going to accuse you of making a fantastic dinner earlier tonight. I certainly wouldn't punt on it. And I'm glad that we didn't punt on this topic. It's I'm glad that we can have lighthearted media ones. We can review some good places to eat, and we can have some interesting dialogue surrounding some unique cases. And
I like it that even though this is a heavy case and what we're talking about might be offensive to some of the people who are listening, I want everyone to understand that.
You don't care. I'm just kidding. We stand by our.
We stand by our convictions here. We stand by our convictions. But, overall, this is something that hopefully you can think about, and hopefully you can think about it in a more meaningful way, just like you were saying. And I agree with you on that.
And if you're thinking of writing something mean in the comments below, instead, share with us your favorite Ninja Turtle.
That's
right.
Is
it Donatello or Leonardo?
Or what's your favorite? Or even lighter. I'm going to even go lighter than that. What's your favorite cereal? If you put that in the comment section, what is your favorite cereal? I'll make a comment.
Was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles a cereal show in some sense? It was a cereal in one sense.
I don't know. Silly Rabbit. Tricks are for kids.
Tricks are for kids. Okay. Well, it's duck season.
That's right.
But anyway, so if you're thinking of making a mean comment, share your favorite Ninja Turtle as well as your favorite cereal in the chat. Comments below.
And that will be wrapping up our episode of the Red Bean Podcast on our discussion on Matt Araiza and his situation with false allegation and
his situation with the United States justice system
and the injustice of society and
Buffalo Bills organization.
Yep, and hopefully he gets rehired.
Hopefully he'll earn his third string punter position back.
The punt god needs to return.
There you go.
Alrighty, that's a wrap. My name is Mr. Toad.
I'm Dr. Frog.
You guys have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.